All right, Jens, can you see this? Can you see
I
what it
can.
says?
I can. I want that so bad.
Yes, I found this in a record shop when we lived in Toronto. It's the freewheeling outtakes, but just the 1962 sessions. And you can tell it's a bootleg because the picture is of 1965 Bob Dylan. And if you look inside, there's 1965 Bob Dylan. But we're renovating the living room, and so I had to move all my records upstairs, and I found it. Like I don't know, like you, I kind of sometimes forget what records I have and don't have. But this kind of links nicely to last week's episode, which was a Substack paid subscriber episode on the Bootleg Series Volume 1, and this week's episode, which is the Freewheeling Bob Dylan. But just there's four sides on this, and I know we're going to get onto it, but this is just the 62 stuff. So this is just the early sessions, and the shit that's already being left off the album is fucking insane. Like Ballad of Hollis Brown, Hero Blues, What You Gonna Do, Baby Please Don't Go. Like I know we're gonna get onto it, but man, the recording sessions for this album, the length of time it went on for, and the songs that weren't chosen almost make me angry.
On your version there, are there like, take one, take two, or is it just like one take of every song?
There's multiple takes of each song, but it doesn't tell you which takes which.
Okay. The only reason
So
the only
this,
reason I ask is because I read that there are 23 outtakes from this recording session, like 23 songs that didn't make the cut somewhere, not just from 62, but also from 63, which is, I mean, some Dylan albums have been longer than that. Like some, such as Nashville Skyline, even I think are like 9 songs. So you could fit like two and a half albums with just outtakes. It's pretty absurd.
this has 17 individual songs on.
Holy shit, that's insane.
But yeah, so today we're talking about Freewheeling Bob Dylan, which is the second studio album. Do you want me to read the scripted bit that's still to it?
Yeah, and then we'll just get
Um,
into it.
yeah, The Freewheeling Bob Dylan is the second studio album by Bob Dylan. It was released on May 27th, 1963 through Columbia Records. The record marked the beginning of Dylan writing contemporary lyrics to traditional melodies. His debut album contained only 2 original songs, whereas 11 of the 13 songs on Freewheeling are original Dylan compositions. I can barely read. Um, so obviously, like anyone listening to this is going to know that the Freewheeling Bob Dylan is quite rightfully, you know, even not just outside of like the Dylan sphere is in the pantheon of greatest albums of all time. What are your opening thoughts on said record?
Let's just take a moment and acknowledge when this was released. 1963, just a couple of days after Dylan's 22nd birthday. Every time I contextually think about how old he is when a given album comes out, I'm fucking pissed that
I
like
agree.
I'm 31 and I feel like my life isn't even this together, nor could I write songs like Blowin' in the Wind or Hard Rain or even outtakes like Let Me Die in My Footsteps. Uh, I don't know, like it's nuts to me. Another thing that I found really interesting when doing some preliminary research is that on August 2nd, so during, as you said, in 1962, some of the recording sessions, Robert Zimmerman officially became Bob Dylan. So it was, I didn't even really think of that. I assumed that it would have been under his first album, but no, even months after the fact, as this album, or as Bob Dylan, the album sells poorly, Robert Zimmerman is officially changing his name. And I think it's worth highlighting too that I think we've said it before, we'll just repeat it, that the first album really didn't do all that well. It sold about 5,000 copies, which is not many, especially for being on the Columbia recording label. On top of that, his single Mixed Up Confusion with Karina Karina as the B-side wasn't doing anything. In fact, it was pulled pretty quickly because of how stale it had become. And then Columbia, while Dylan's in the studio, already recording album number 2, they're considering dropping him. They're like, Hammond, your guy that you brought in, that folk singer, he's kind of a flop, kind of a folly. We don't really like that this album is selling so poorly. And the only reason he was able to continue, or maybe not the only, but a primary reason that he was able to continue is because of the weight of 2 men, John Hammond and Johnny Cash. They were both in his corner and they were like, this thing needs to get out. And obviously, as they say, the rest is sort of history. But it's, man, can you just imagine for a moment though, if Columbia did decide to drop him? Like, would he have gone to another record label? Would his career have just fizzled out? If Freewheelin had been allowed to come out, would it have been the success that it was? Obviously it's impossible to say, but just as you even think of your own life and the various like major milestones, whether it's in your career or your personal life, like sometimes it can be interesting to think, what if? Like, what if this one detail had been different, or what if I had done this thing in a different way? And man, for Freewheelin, that feels like the theme. As we've said, there are something like 23 plus outtakes alone. So you could almost reconfigure this set list like thousands, if not millions of ways. And if any one of those different set lists had made the bill, would it have been as successful? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting as well to think about Mixed Up Confusion, because that was a single that had electric instruments on. And so when Dylan, quote unquote, went electric at Newport, even though he'd previously gone electric recording Bringing It All Back Home, he'd actually previously gone electric in 62 with Mixed Up Confusion. So it's interesting how obviously it didn't sell very well and was pulled, but history's kind of turned Newport into something that kind of much more than it actually was. I know the reaction obviously was as big as it was, but this idea if that's the first time, like people treat it as if that's the first time Dylan had ever even fucking seen an electric guitar.
What's an electric? How you can plug these in?
But like, I think as well when we talk about Freewheeling, we've got to talk about the iconic album cover shot by Don Hunstein of him and Suze. I mean, pretty bold move to release an album with your then girlfriend on the cover, especially when you're not the most faithful of partners. I mean, that's a big fucking swing because it's now, what, 63 years later, and it's obviously still out there for everyone, but obviously one of the coolest album covers of all time. And I think one of the most recreated album covers, like that street in New York, is I've seen it on Instagram where there's just people just queuing.
Yeah, it's like Abbey Road, but in America or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I'm happy to start talking about songs if you want to. So we spoke beforehand and we acknowledged that there's nothing else we can say really about Blowing in the Wind, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, anything like that. Like outside of saying that I think Hard Rain's Gonna Fall might be his best ever written song. Blowing in the Wind's probably the song that's going to endure the longest outside of maybe Heaven's Door potentially. So we kind of want to focus on the songs that people don't necessarily talk about as much, don't we?
Agreed. And the only thing that I wanted to say, in addition to what you said, is there's something about Dylan in his lyricism that you become so fixated on the words that sometimes you can forget what's going on behind it with, his guitar, with his harmonica, and in particular, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I never really realized how beautiful the guitar playing is on that song. And I think that theme is also true throughout this album. It sort of permeates the Freewheelin sessions, is like showcasing his ability not just as a lyricist, but as a musician.
I think that's actually just true throughout his entire career. Like,
Yeah.
people, go like, oh, he's a great writer, and people focus on the voice or whatever, but it's kind of like musical skill comes second. And we always reference the book Simple Twist of Fate about the recording of Blood on the Tracks, but every single player on that said they were shocked at how good Dylan was at playing guitar, because it's almost like, yeah, he does have the guitar, but you kind of forget that he's actually a good guitar player, especially in the early days, like that, the finger picking on the first few albums. And then again, when he goes back to it on Good As I've Been to You and World Gone Wrong, like he's a really fucking. I'm not saying he's like the greatest guitar player of all time, but he's a solid player. And you're right, like when you actually take a second and remove the words, which clearly are the most important bit. I'm not pretending they're not, but when you listen to what's going on, as you say in the background, it's also just really good music. I feel like he gets such a bad rap of like people. I was talking, someone at work the other day was talking about Dylan and was like, oh yeah, he's a really good writer, but don't like him musically and stuff. And it's like, fair enough. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it's almost unfair that people just focus purely on what he's written and not the fact that the songs as a whole are just really, really good songs. And especially like the folk albums, they're just really, really solid folk music that is following in the kind of footsteps that Woody laid down.
Do you think that I should clarify? I know that there are other musicians where this is true, where some singular trait, whether it's a voice or maybe their appearance, there's something that is slightly off-putting to a large portion of the population. But do you think Dylan is the most maligned in this way? Like, I can't think of many other musicians who would get anywhere close to the way that people treat Dylan.
I think it's because he's so critically acclaimed, and people have this kind of visceral reaction against that. It's a byproduct of the internet, I think, where people want to
Yeah.
be they want to be against the kind of current, which is, and again, people can dislike what they like, but it's when people say the Beatles are overrated, or I think you can look at what's happened with Cameron Winter recently, which
Yeah.
is, I think if Cameron Winter hadn't been so critically acclaimed, there would have been people who go, oh, I don't really like this guy, whatever. And instead, what you're getting is this incredibly visceral reaction online of like, not only do I not like this guy, but everyone who likes him is fucking lying. But I do think Dylan is, because there are some people who get past, like Tom Waits seems to get past. I mean, I love Tom Waits. I'm not. He's like maybe my second favorite artist after Bob Dylan. But
Dang.
people like accept that his voice is odd and is quite hard to listen to. It's quite hard to get into. But Dylan, for some reason, yeah, people seem to take real offense at the idea of even liking. But I think it's because you're kind of told that you should like him, or you're told that he's the best ever, and then you listen to it and you go, obviously not us, but other people listen to it and go, I don't like this, and therefore I'm going to really not like this, as opposed to just kind of ignoring it.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know, like, before the advent of the internet, if there was more of this phenomenon that we're describing here. I'm sure it existed, but maybe not to the same degree, because in the past, your platforms for having an opinion and sharing it were limited to, like, if you were able to somehow make it into a newspaper or on the news or in a magazine, or if you somehow made or published your own. Whereas, like, now everyone's sort of a critic and can say whatever the fuck they want whenever they want from behind the screen of a smartphone or a laptop. Speaking of smartphones and laptops, let's talk about Girl from the North Country. Genuinely,
Great segue, great segue there.
genuinely, like, without a doubt, without question, I think it's one of the most beautiful and haunting songs, period. But especially, like, in Dylan's catalog. I mean, what other, like, how many other artists could take even a song from their initial, folky early career and reimagine it in a country croon with Johnny Cash and have it work as seamlessly and effectively? And I'm being a little bit, like, tongue in cheek, but, like, genuinely, this song is highly regarded for a reason. I think it's simply just out of this world.
I mean, obviously, it's taking the tune of Scarborough Fair, which Simon and Garfunkel do a very nice version of. And again, I want to call out Dylan being very ballsy of including a song for his first girlfriend, Echo, on an album that has his current girlfriend Sue's on the cover. Like, this guy is just got fucking massive balls that
It is called
don't
the
always pay off.
Freewheelin Bob Dylan. He's out here just doing whatever he wants.
But I do agree. I think it's an amazing version. My wife really, really likes the Johnny Cash version, but I personally prefer this because I prefer folk music over country music, I suppose. But
Ooh,
like,
drop. So we're gonna ask
oh,
if you're listening now in the comments. Tell us which one you like more. Do you prefer Freewheelin or Nashville Skyline of Girl from the North Country?
but also there's some amazing versions of it from like 2017 where it becomes like, because obviously this is a young man on Freewheeling. I mean, on a young man being like, oh, I hope she remembers me, because it's kind of teenage love. But then when Dylan's playing it in his late 70s, it's becoming like, I hope she remembers me because I'm because we're fucking old now and like memories fading. It's one of those unique songs that kind of Dylan's the master of, which is over time it just seems to take on more meaning. Not that he could have possibly thought of that when he wrote it when he was 21, 22, but just the older he gets, the more it just means. And it's something that's kind of, maybe we should work out a way to talk about that more on a different episode. But this idea of like,
Yeah,
he almost like kind of sets himself up to have these amazing songs later in his career, which, like I said, he's not sat there at 21 going like, well, I hope I'm still alive at 78 doing this, and I better
yeah,
write a verse that resonates then. But it is interesting how kind of they're almost timeless, and that
yeah.
they follow him
Agreed.
throughout life.
Yeah, and I I'm so sorry that so many times throughout these episodes I'm going to mention the words liner notes. I think Cameron Winter and liner notes are going to be our new
Good as I've
uh
been to.
good as I've been to you. I wanted to say world gone wrong. The liner notes by Nat Hentoff on the back of this album begin with "He's so goddamned real, it's unbelievable." And I thought that's one of the
No, he's not.
funniest things I've ever heard. But he goes on to say, the irrepressible reality, and reality is bolded for some reason, the irrepressible reality of Bob Dylan is a compound of spontaneity, candor, slicing wit, and an uncommonly perceptive eye and ear for the way many of us constrict our capacity for living, while only a few of us don't. And it's, again, what an interesting way to sort of summarize this album. Even in the first paragraph is recognizing that on album number 2, just on the heels of an album that didn't sell well, didn't perform well, was sort of a flop or a folly, we have this new reinvigorated Bob Dylan legally uh, as this compound of spontaneity, candor, wit, and an uncommonly perceptive eye. And I genuinely do think that that applies to something like Masters of War, for example, the next song that I just want to briefly mention. Um, I don't know. We were talking before we hit record, Adam. I said that I personally feel like I never see conversations about Masters of War. When we talk about Dylan as a protest singer, as a songwriter, we think of things like Blowing in the Wind, even from this album, and Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. You might think of songs like Hattie Carroll or The Death of Emmett Till or The Times They Are Changin', even as a song, or most of that album when you're not talking about the love songs. But I feel like nobody ever talks about Masters of War. Like, do you agree with that statement, or do you see more people talking about it than I do?
Um, I, I mean, I don't see people talk about Dylan enough, to be honest with you. But no, I think you're right. The Masters of Wars, because it could come out today, and it would be just as you wouldn't even need to change a fucking line in the song, and you could release it today and it'd still be completely relevant, which says more about how fucked up the world is than anything else. But I think you're right. I think like Masters of War for me is one of Dylan's greatest ever songs, and should be in the pantheon of songs that remain. And as long as it's relevant, then we're failing as a species, I think.
Well, and again, I'm not going to read the liner notes every time, but I have to read them in this case because it is so good. Again, it won't be every song, just a couple more. But Nat Hentoff says of Dylan. So we know this. Dylan has said this elsewhere, but Dylan says, "I've never really written anything like this before," and he's making special attention to the line of like, "I hope that you die." I don't think of, I don't sing songs which hope people will die, but I couldn't help it with this one. This song is sort of a striking out. But then he goes on to say, meaning Nat Hentoff, not Dylan, the rage is a way of catharsis, a way of getting temporary relief from the heavy feeling of impotence that affects many who cannot understand a civilization which juggles its own means for oblivion and that calls that performance an act towards peace. And I can't think of, like you said, I can't think of like a better way, a better protest song to succinctly sum up even our current world in 2026, like 63 years removed from the release of this album, talking about these people who sit behind desks, who wage war, who drop bombs, who do all these like wicked, vile, heinous things in the name of like peace and civilization, while doing so with like the means of our oblivion. And obviously in the case of this context, he's likely dealing with like the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War and things that are in the zeitgeist at the time, but also recognizing that like World War I and World War II were very much in the zeitgeist and in the consciousness of people who either lived through it or had parents who did. I mean, Dylan was born in 41, which is just, right near the end of World War II. So it's not like Dylan probably has many core memories about anything to do with it, but I'm sure he had lots of memories, right, from his parents, from his grandparents, from his neighbors, and those who lived with him in his actual hometowns of Hibbing and Duluth, not Gallup, New Mexico, and wherever he said he's from in South Dakota. But like genuinely, like this song has always blown me away and bewildered me, to say things like even Jesus would never forgive what you do. Like, set aside whether or not Jesus is like a historical figure or not, or if he was the son of God incarnate or not, the idea of Jesus and his like permeation in especially the American consciousness and sort of being this, revered figure, especially within Christianity, to say that like the most loving and forgiving person wouldn't even forgive what these people do. I mean, like, I still feel that way now about the masters of war of today.
I remember when I first heard it, the "I hope you die" line really hit me. But the older I've got, the lines like, you've brought the worst fear into the world of people not wanting to have further children, and lines like "you ain't worth the blood that runs through your veins," and like we all like Dylan's kind of scathing songs from the Electric period when he's angry at Mr. Jones or like a Rolling Stone or what have you. But this seems to be like Dylan actually angry. And people call his politics performative because he moved away from it, and at the time he was kind of trying to take a step back. But I genuinely don't think you can write a song like this and not be invested. And but I'm one of the people who doesn't think it's performative. I think he genuinely did care about the civil rights movement as much as a complete unknown decided to kind of gloss over that.
Yeah.
But he even brought it back into his set last year, which people said is probably in relation to kind of Gaza or something like. So
It was powerful. I saw him play it.
yeah, I mean, I've only seen him play it once, and it was back in like 2016 or something. But that was when it was the Wolfman voice, so I didn't even know he was playing Masters of War till near the end. But yeah, I'd like to hear him play it again now, because I think A, it fits the Shadow Kingdom style, and B, like I say, hearing I hope that you die, it is still going to hit as hard now because it's the same person 63 years later still singing the same thing and still having the exact same meaning behind it, and still depressingly relevant.
What's really interesting, the Dylan Bible, which is Dylan all the songs. If you ever hear us refer to the Dylan Bible, that's what we're referring to. The article on Masters of War called out 2 different times that he's played it in front of like military crowds, or at least within a context where the military was relevant, and both times decided to exclude that final verse, which it's a
Okay.
very interesting like self-censor or whatever, like to decide like I'm not going to actually sing this I hope that you die, even though I'm singing everything else horrific about you.
You ain't worth the blood that runs in your veins, but I'm not gonna wish death on you. If we move on to the next song, track 4. Okay, now I'm gonna have some hot takes on this album, and this is the first of the hot take. Well,
Hit
I
me.
don't think this is necessarily a hot take, to be honest with you. I think Down the Highway is pretty shit. As far as songs on the album go, there's gonna be a couple more that I don't like. I don't want to bring up Cameron Winter again, so close to the last time I brought him up. But do you remember that article recently where he said he listened to Freewheelin and he said some of them were stinkers and made him roll his eyes? And people on Instagram were like, "Well, what are the stinkers on Freewheelin?" I've always thought there are a couple,
Yep.
especially given the outtakes, and that's what's kind of kept Freewheeling out of my top 10 Dylan albums. I know a lot of people will call me like some form of heretic for saying that, but Down the Highway is one of
Jesus is
them.
not going to forgive you for saying that.
I wouldn't want him to, mate. But yeah, Down the Highway, I just think is just kind of rubbish in the context of Blowing in the Wind, Go from the North Country, Masters of War. Following it is Bob Dylan's Blues, Hard Rain, and Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. And in the middle, you've got Down the Highway, which is just the most kind of boring, kind of bluesy song. I think just it sticks out for all the wrong reasons. It's almost like oh, what's it fucking called? Pledging My Time on Blonde. Of
Ugh.
like it sticks out
Ugh.
because it's just so nothingy compared to the genius surrounding it. It's just yeah, I don't know. Are you gonna tell me you love it?
No, 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 no. I'm going to echo what you said. And for context, I like to listen as we prep these just straight through, no phone, no distractions, and just write down notes as it comes. So, like, you finish Masters of War, and he's just declared, like, I hope that you die, your death will come soon. I'll follow your casket on a pale afternoon. How it ends, right? So to literally put this song after that, it somehow feels like maybe he's trying to put a little palate cleanser, something a little bit cheeky, something a little bit more lighthearted after something so dark. But it's like, does it lighten the mood or does it ruin it? Like most people, when this would have come out, they would have only listened to this on vinyl. They didn't have CDs, they didn't have streaming, so they're not like hopping around songs. They probably put that needle down and let it play. So to like listen to Masters of War and to give no time for like taking in what was just said, and suddenly you're jumping into fucking Down the Highway. Like it feels like a slap in the face. And I genuinely want to know, does anyone like it? Is there anyone out there listening that would say, oh, you guys are wrong. Down the Highway is my favorite Bob Dylan song. If that's you, please tell me why.
It sounds like what would have been the worst song on the debut album. Or it sounds like something you'd hear on the bootleg series and kind of go like, oh, I could see why he didn't include that on one of the most seminal fucking albums of all time.
It's almost a 4-minute song, dude. It's like there's like Oxford Town is a minute 50. This is 3.5 minutes for what?
I hate the guitar in as well. That kind of like going down the scale. Like I went into this like being kind of relatively nice about the song, but no, now we're on it. Fucking gonna get it. No, I think the song is just a bad song. Like genuinely, like it's like I would be interested for someone to let us know why they like it, because I just think it's just I couldn't believe it was one written by him. I thought it was, when I first learned that two were traditional, I'd have kind of assumed maybe this was, because it's just like I say, it's just kind of nothing. And by the way, he recorded this the same day he recorded "Blowing in the Wind." So he's writing one of the most famous songs. Well, he's recording one of the most famous songs with like probably the best longevity of his career on the same day he's recording "Down the Fucking Highway." And I just think it's, again, we'll get onto the outtakes. And if you've listened to the Substack episode, or if you want to, then you can go and subscribe and listen to it. But the stuff that's not included on Freewheelin, and we say this all the time, that he's his own worst editor, and obviously we're going to get onto it a lot more later in the career with Infidels and what have you. But this is just one of those moments where you're like, sorry, he listened to "Let Me Die in My Footsteps" and went, nah, I'll take that off actually, and let's have "Down the Highway" on. It's just, yeah, I don't know if you have this phrase out there. It's just naff.
No, what is that?
Just like it's like rubbish, but you almost like can't even get worked up about it because there's nothing there to get worked up of. It's just it's so much naff. It's just like, get out, just leave.
You're sort of the in-house resident expert here. How many times has he played this live? Do you know, or do you want to look while I talk?
I would bet money on it being 0.
Take a look while I say what I'm about to say. So, my one saving grace for this song, and it's not even that good of a saving grace. It's not like this is one of the songs that was recorded later in 1963 and like replaced a different song. This was on the original cut. I'm looking before me here at the original Freewheelin', and we haven't made mention of that just yet. But Freewheelin' was initially going to have 4 different songs on the set. That was going to be Rocks and Gravel, Let Me Die in My Footsteps, Ramblin' Gamblin' Willie, and Talkin' John Birch, Paranoid Blues. Shortly before it's released, it's pulled from production, tracks are replaced, and new liner notes are made, and then what we know as Freewheelin' goes out into the world, right?
It was released, wasn't it? Wasn't it released for a very brief window?
Not every copy was able to get recalled. It technically never went out officially, but they weren't able to retrieve everything. So those who had, like boxes of it or whatever, they did go out to stores, but like very few, very, very few. And to just like double click on that for just a moment, I read that the original pressing, if you're able to find one, and it sounds like Adam somehow has access to one through a family member, if you're able to find an original pressing of the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan with those 4 tracks, it is considered the most valuable and the rarest record in America, with one pristine copy having sold for nearly $35,000 several years ago. That's a nice little nest egg you have for yourself there, my guy, if you do in fact get your hands on that someday.
I mean, I'm worried about the person finding out that that's
Don't tell them about the podcast.
It has been played 0 times, by the way.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, even Dylan, for whatever reason, like included it, but doesn't like it.
But like you said about Ramblin' Gamblin' Willie, for example, which is also a song that I don't think is kind of that good, but because that's on a bootleg album, I'm fine with it. I listen to it on the bootleg and kind of go like, oh, this is kind of nothingy, but fine. it just seems to me in that kind of lane of like it's something you discover. To me, it sounds like something you discover on the Bootleg Series Volume One, and you kind of go like, "Huh, okay," and then move on to the next song. Not in between fucking Masters of War and fucking Hard Rain. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So, all right,
it's
Down the
mind
Highway.
blowing.
If, like, say, if you like it, let us know because I genuinely would be interested as to what you think about it. And do you remember we had? I can't remember who it was. They have a really cool name, but they said their first ever Bob Dylan song. Oh, Bobby Milwaukee.
Yep,
Their first ever Bob Dylan song was "Froggy Went a Courting" from Good as I've Been to You. Third mention on the
iconic.
podcast. But like, it's anyone's first like Down the Highway seems to be that would almost beat Froggy Went a Courting to me as like weirdest Dylan songs to be introduced to.
Ooh, that would be a fun category. What is the weirdest Dylan song to be introduced to Bob Dylan? Oh man. Well, you mentioned July 9th being a day in which Dylan records Blowin' in the Wind and Down the Highway. Wasn't the only song he recorded that day. He also recorded Bob Dylan's Blues on July 9th, 1962. What do you think of this song? What are your thoughts here? This is another one that I'm kind of like, really? Like, does this one
Mm.
have to be here?
I don't I like it a lot more than I like Down the Highway. Again, it
Same,
feels
same.
the voice he's doing his very first album voice. It still seems in that period where he's experimenting and changing up the style a lot. It's got the long introduction of "Folk some days in the Tin Pan Alley," that bit. Then it's all of his like pop culture references of Lone Ranger and Tonto, etc. Like I don't I don't mind it. I'm not as offended by it as I'm Down the Highway.
Same.
Like you, I could not have it on the album and still be quite happy, I imagine. Like, this isn't the glue that holds Freewheeling together for me. That's the next two songs as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And but like I say, I don't. It's like a I don't know like a 3-star song if you know what I mean. Of like it's kind of okay, it's kind of fun. I do think following down the highway, especially. So let's say Masters of War is obviously just dark. It's a really good song, but it's dark, and then Down the Highway just depresses me. But then Bob Dylan's Blues is kind of a bit more light-hearted. The guitar's a bit more like kind of like on this weird like train, listening to this tale from this kind of hobo who's telling you about TV shows and what have you. Um, but yeah, I could do without it, I suppose.
It's worth mentioning that this was the original working title of the album itself. Freewheelin', before it was Freewheelin', was known as Bob Dylan's Blues. And I think, as you even said, maybe last week or the week prior, it's possible this could have turned into two albums, being Bob Dylan's Blues and Freewheelin', but obviously just the one existing. I also I think I can concur with most of what you said. It's a really goofy song, like very, very goofy, but it is endearing in a way. And I like what Dylan even said about the song. Dylan said, this song was composed spontaneously. It's one it's one of these really off the cuff songs. I start with an idea and then I follow, or then I feel what follows. The best way I can describe this one is that it's sort of like walking down a street and you gaze in and walk by. And I think he means kind of like an alleyway where like you're walking down the road and you see another road, and so you kind of look, you might think about it for a second, and then you just keep on going. And that's a funny way to describe a song, but I think I understand what he means. Like it catches your eye, it's intriguing, it's goofy, but it's not something that's going to hold and maintain your attention forever. You just kind of keep going.
There are some funny lines in it, to be fair. Like the whole "I don't have no sports car, I don't care to have one, I can walk anytime around the block" and all stuff like that. Like, but again, I think maybe we're judging it a little bit unfairly because we want the whole album to be as heavy as Masters of War and Hard Rain, which obviously that's not Dylan's intention, so fine. But personally, for me, like I said, I don't skip this song like I skip Down the Highway, but the whole time I'm probably listening to it being like, come on, let's get to Hard Rain. Come on, let's fucking get through this bit and let's get to Hard Rain because I need some hard rain's gonna fall on me.
Well, I don't have much to say about Hard Rain. And personally, I mean, like we've said, what are we going to say that hasn't already been said about like a song that quintessentially encapsulates like the zeitgeist of a moment after the Cuban Missile Crisis? It's been said that that's when it was written, is shortly after, like in October, I think, of 1962, and this was recorded on December 6th, 1962. And I only say that because my birthday is December 6th, and I always like finding special kinships with things. And so this feels especially fitting. But like, I think Dylan's on record somewhere at some point. I don't remember where it was, but he basically said that like most of the leading lines and the verses could have been entire songs on their own, and then he kind of threw them all together to make Hard Rain. I don't know if you've seen a similar
Yeah, I
thing
think he said
before.
it's each line is the opening line of a different song. I think he
Yeah.
said. Um, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know what else we can add to the discourse on Hard Rain's Gonna Fall outside of, like I said, I think it's, if it's not his best written song, I think it's top two, probably.
What would be next to it?
It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. And also, I would say maybe Every Grain of Sand. As much as I
Okay.
don't believe what he's saying in Every Grain of Sand, I think as a song, it's insane. Um, I would also say as well, Hard Rain obviously had an amazing kind of transformation in live shows from the 1976, the actual fucking album called Hard Rain that doesn't include Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, but was on the broadcast for the Rolling Thunder Review. That's a great version. The Budokan version's great. Either that's just an instrumental, but that's kind of like a reggae style. But you can basically check any year of Dylan playing Hard Rain's live, and it still hits exactly the same. Like it's just timeless.
Well,
Speaking of timeless as well,
before you do go
don't
to Don't Think
think
Twice,
twice.
the only thing I was going to say, and it's not even necessarily about the song, but it's just curious that in the original lineup of songs, had the original Freewheelin' gone out, Hard Rain would have been the third song. And it's an interesting thought to like Masters of War is one of the songs that was recorded later and replaced one of the four that had been on the original. And so like Masters of War slots into where Hard Rain was originally supposed to go. And so we're so familiar and so used to the track listing that we like know and have listened to for decades at this point that it is kind of interesting to consider like its sequencing and its an original in its original intended space. But
Well, it's a
I don't
perfect
know.
like side closer, I think.
Agreed.
It kind of almost. I know we're now judging it based on what we know, but it does to me it almost seems wrong that it would be like the third track. It should be the closer of the first side, and then the opening of the second side to do my second segue into Don't Think Twice, unless you're going to
Yep.
interrupt me again.
Nope.
Yes, I don't think twice is all right. Again, I know you said you wanted to say something about this. I haven't got much to say on this other than it's obviously an amazing fucking song. And again, the reggae version from Budokan's really funny. My wife really loves that version because it just makes her laugh because it's like, don't think twice, it's all right, man. Like it's so stupid. I love it so
Yeah.
much. But yeah, you had something to say about your favorite subject liner notes.
I know, and so sorry, but it is genuinely fascinating to me, and this is so peculiar, and I cannot find any reason, rhyme, explanation. So, other Dylanologists out there, if you know something, or if you find something, let us know. In the liner notes, Matt Hentoff says of Don't Think Twice, Dylan's accompaniment, meaning like those playing with him, on this track includes Bruce Langhorne on guitar, George Barnes on bass guitar, Dick Wellstood, best name ever, on piano, Gene Ramey on bass, and Herm Lovell on drums. Have you. Uh, Don't Think Twice does not have drums. It fucking definitely does not have a goddamn piano on it. I can't hear a bass. I know that Adam, before we hit record, you said that there has been rumors that like Dylan didn't play guitar. I hadn't heard that. Where does that come from?
I honestly can't remember. I don't know if it's just something I've read before, but it's definitely like kind of a theory. Also, don't Google Dick Wellstood because you get some weird results.
Well, where this gets weirder, again, I have the version, the original mono, or sorry, the original like track listing in mono. It was reissued for a record store day thing, and so they reproduced faithfully the original liner notes that would have appeared if you had bought that coveted $35,000 version now. And so again, to talk of Don't Think Twice. It says Dylan's accompaniment on this track is the same as Solid Road or Rocks and Gravel, except that Gene Ramey is the bassist. So even the original liner notes are saying that Don't Think Twice has accompaniment or a backing band. Please, someone out there explain this to us. Why does Nat Hentoff and Columbia and whoever else approved the liner notes for the back of this album and the reissue, why is that note included? I have no idea, but I'm so intrigued to know, like, is there a version that does have a backing band that we've never heard? Is that locked up in the vault somewhere? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think they've scraped the entire barrel of Dylan's folk years at this point for all the fucking bootlegs. I'd be amazed if there was another version of Don't Think Twice. But yeah, it's very weird because
But
it's just he's just not backed by anyone. So
and I'm trying to think, like, okay, so the original liner notes, I could see, a tiny little error being made. You mess up somewhere, but it's like when they were reproduced for the album that we now have, why wouldn't they have corrected it? Like, it makes no sense to me. I am so perplexed. Something about my mind like can't get over this one. I can't stop thinking about it. So we will move on here to Bob Dylan's Dream, but I genuinely want somebody to hit me up with like the reason and explanation for this. But to speak of Bob Dylan's Dream, this is actually one of my favorite songs on the album. And in college, back in fucking 2013, 2014, I wrote a paper on Bob Dylan's Dream. And it's funny because I wrote in my notebook, and I think we've said this before like 1,000 times. How is a 21 or 22-year-old singing this song? He's acting like he's 72 or maybe 82, looking back down the tunnel of his career and his life and recollecting the fond times of hanging out with your pals and having a good old time. But this dude's like 21 years old when he wrote this. And I mean, I guess to my credit too, I was also probably like 20, 21, 22 when I wrote the paper that I wrote. So maybe there is something about like graduating high school, going into college, or in Dylan's case, being in the early stages of a career outside of the world that you've always known and already feeling nostalgic for a time and a place you can't go back to. But this is one of the songs that, like, when I listen to Freewheelin, I'm so familiar with this album front to back because I played it so much when I was young that, like, most of the time I don't actually like listening to Freewheelin. Like, I like lots of the songs. It is one of my favorite albums, but it's not one that I actively listen to very often. But Bob Dylan's Dream is one of those songs that I almost always will listen to, even if I'm skipping some of the other songs around it.
yeah, I mean, I was going to say this is for me the most underrated track on the album, and almost like I kind of forget about it when I'm not listening to Freewheeling, and every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh, why isn't this considered one of his best? And like you said, the line stuff, like I've just got the lyrics in front of me, but where he's on about um with half damp eyes I stared to the room where my friends and I spent many an afternoon, where we together weathered many a storm, laughing and singing till the early hours of the morn. Or I wish, I wish, I wish in vain that we could sit simply in that room again. $10,000 at the drop of a hat. I'd give it all gladly if our lives could be like that. And like you said, he's 21 when he writes this. And I don't know, now being like 32, looking back, I almost like just laugh at the idea of a 21-year-old being nostalgic because it's like you've got fucking no idea what's about to come your way, son. But even to myself, of like, even if at 21 I was like, God, I'm tired and stressed. Like, no, you're fucking not, mate. Wait until you got a kid, then you're fucking tired and stressed, son. But like you said, this sounds like something someone should be saying on their fucking deathbed, not 21 and having relatively zero problems at that point in your life. But again, it's the thing we were saying. It's something that happens certainly in Dylan's early career. And the only reason it stopped is because his age kind of caught up with him. But he manages to sound like someone decades older and manages to have these songs that still resonate. So he didn't play this song for many, many years, and then he started playing it again in 1991, which is kind of known as the worst year of the never-ending tour because his voice is peak kind of whine. But Bob Dylan's Blues still sounded no, Bob Dylan's Dream rather. And that's another problem I have is I
know.
always confuse Blues and Dream. But yeah, so Bob Dylan's Dream was like a highlight of those 1991 shows because he just played it, him and his guitar. And especially like it took on a new meaning of his career going not great in 1991 at least, and suddenly he is then longing for how things used to be. And so again, like we're saying about Masters of War and Girl from the North Country, it's this song that somehow takes on a new meaning because he's written it so timelessly and left it so open ended that you can. And yeah, the stuff I see in this now, when I read the lyrics or when I listen to it, and it's like there are times where it's like, when I had zero fucking problems, and it was nice to sit around and drink till the early hours of the morning. Now I got drunk 2 weeks ago at my works conference. I had a hangover for 3 fucking days. Like, there's part of me that's like, it would be nice to go back to some periods of my life, but yeah, for a 21-year-old to include this is mind blowing. And I just echo what you say of it's not my favorite on the album, but it's definitely up there. And like I said, it's
Yeah.
certainly underrated as far as I'm concerned. And I mean underrated in terms of my own appreciation of Dylan. I don't like when people say underrated about other stuff, but for me, it's like I say, every time I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, this one's fucking amazing,
Yeah.
and I should listen to it more often.
The only thing that's not timeless about this is saying $10,000 at the drop of a hat. Now, if $10,000 is a lot of money, but I was curious, like, what's the exchange rate going back to 1962 to now? Like, how much inflation has taken place? So $10,000 in 1962 is
Can I guess? Can I guess?
yeah. What's the approximate equivalent for today in
Okay, so
2026?
double for every decade, like 72K or something like that.
Probably like 184,000.
Jesus Christ.
So like like, so to say something like $10,000 to a lot of people, that is still a lot of money today, but most people don't have almost $200,000 to drop on something, and so that makes it feel especially more like, knowing the translation to modern context, you're like, wow, that is a lot of money that you drop at the drop of a hat. To like, you'd give it all gladly if your life could be like that. And I don't know. I'm not saying that like young people can't be sentimental and nostalgic. I think anybody can, but it's just interesting to consider people, especially who are young, feeling that way. Like, I didn't start feeling the nostalgia and um that sentimentality for youth until I was much older and like removed from it. It was sort of like a, man, I'm approaching 30 and I miss when I was 16. I miss when I was 18. I miss when I didn't have responsibility. And I guess, to be fair, I don't know what Dylan's life was like. I do know I read somewhere that like the amount of money that he was making in this time because of how well this album sold, it was like the equivalent of getting like 20,000 a week. So like Dylan was making like bank pretty quickly. So like there probably are ways in which his life was changing, and there's pressures to perform and relational strife or whatever. So maybe he was missing the simple days on the old iron ore range or whatever.
I think as well, we've got to be careful to not fall into the trap of thinking this is autobiographical, though.
That's true too.
In that Dylan from an early age is writing from other people's perspectives, and it, I like you. I don't. When I was taking the piss before about being 21 and being nostalgic, I'm not saying that people can't feel like that, but to me, it sounds like Dylan's writing from someone else's point of view, and is writing a song that's purposely kind of nostalgic and melancholic, and from what I think just sounds like old age. And so he could just be inhabiting a character and just kind of flexing his writing muscles. I don't think there's any reason that's not also true potentially. I mean, the point is obviously it's Dylan, so the point is for it to be kind of hard to tell who the kind of singer is, as it were. The old Rambo "I is not the self" thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, regardless, I think it's one of those songs. Well, it means different things to different people. That's the genius of it. You can look into it and go, yeah, I remember when me and my housemates at uni used to sit around doing that. Or, I remember when me and Han moved to Canada and were really kind of wide-eyed and idealistic. It affects you at different points of your life, and and that's just what makes it like an amazing song. And to people listening who aren't that familiar with the song potentially, because it's not as well known, it's just really worth listening to and kind of losing yourself in, because it is just an absolute banger on the album.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. We're reaching like the home stretch of the album here, and I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Historically, we're basically hitting the point where I'm like, oh man, it's kind of like a slog to get through. Like, I don't it's not that I hate the songs, it's not even that I dislike them. It's just like especially when you consider what could have been on here, like Let Me Die in My Footsteps, Quit Your Low Down Ways, Walls of Red Ring, Worried Blues, like to include a
Even
minute
leaving rocks and gravel on as well, which I think is a better song than anything we're about to talk about.
I know. And like I mean, Oxford Town is another song that was recorded on December 6th, so like there's that like I want to like it for that purpose, but it's like a minute and 50 seconds, and it's a song that on the surface you might not even know what it's about. Like you understand like generally speaking what it's about. Like it sounds like something about being denied access to something because of the color of their skin, but this is specifically written about an event that took place. Do you even know what it is, Adam?
Yeah, not yeah, not off the top of my head.
I didn't either, so I had to look it up. So apparently in 1961, so just a year before it was written and recorded, a man named James Meredith, who is a Black American man, he was denied enrollment at the University of Mississippi Oxford despite a 1954 desegregation ruling. So JFK sent in federal troops to like aid this guy going to class. So essentially, James Meredith was the first black man who was admitted entrance into a university in the state of Mississippi. But it's like I don't even think his name is said. You maybe don't even know that context if you unless you look it up. But like from the song itself, none of that is there. And so to me, it feels like this weird, like the message is still good and important. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm wondering like where Dylan's mind was again to include this over some of the other songs that were excluded.
So I don't mind the song because of how short it is. It's weirdly kind of jovial as well for something that is such a serious issue. You know, like me and my gal's son, we got met with a tear gas bomb. I don't even know why we come going back where we come from. It's like almost like a kind of funny line that would have been included on Bob Dylan's Dream. No, Bob Dylan's oh fuck's sake, Bob Dylan's Blues. um, yeah, you know, it's I think it's okay. Um, but like you said, it's as far as protest songs go, it's hard to know what it's about outside of knowing about the color of his skin, etc. Compared to what could have been left off, what could have been put on. Sorry, and this could have been left off for. I know we keep going back to that, but that's kind of an ongoing theme of the second half of the album.
I mean, it has to
Also,
be.
interestingly, played once in 1990.
That's it.
Um,
Well, ever?
yeah, which is kind of strange. But he played it in Oxford Town.
Do you think he did he really, or are you just guessing?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now. 25th.
Oh,
I've got the show
okay.
downloaded. 25th of October 1990. Which is kind of funny because it's like shouting out the place, but for bad reason.
Right? Like know your history, guys. Come on now.
It's like after 9/11, he played in New York, and he played just like Tom Tom's Blues because the line at the end, "I'm going back to New York City. I believe I've had enough," and he sang that, and this stadium goes crazy for it because obviously like New York was all banding together following 9/11. That's a nice reason to shout out the city you're in. Oxford Town of like, "Hey guys, I'm going to do this song I've never played live." About how you're all fucking racist.
Yeah, and that most of them probably were related to the people that were involved, and this thus still racist.
Um, should we go on to Talking World
So,
War Three Blues? Actually, I
y-
will say, Talking World War Three Blues. We've said before that we're not massive fans of the talking songs. We spoke about it a lot on the Substack episode, the bootleg series episode. So if you didn't listen to that, neither of us are massive fans of talking songs. I just don't. For me, they just don't work. That I don't live. I think they're quite good because he plays off the crowd. There are good live versions of this as well, especially from the Halloween show. But again, just on an album that has so much kind of important, kind of reverential songs on the first half, that's introducing who Bob Dylan is. Blown in the Wind, Girl from the North Country, Masters of War. That these are songs that are like you're gonna hear them and they're gonna kind of shock you to the core, and you're gonna be like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, who's this new kind of poet laureate who's blowing my mind with his lyricism? And then Talking World War Three Blues just sounds like kind of a bad stand-up routine, and it's better than stuff like Bear Mountain Picnic Massacre for me. And still obviously it's still political. There's still some funny lines. I'm not pretending it's not all bad, but I just think in the middle of an album, I said on last week's episode on the bootleg one, it reminds me of skits that used to be on rap albums,
Mm.
where it's just in the middle of all of these songs, they're suddenly like trying to be a funny bit, and I just don't like it, man.
Yeah. I mean, I will say similar to what you said, this is probably the talking song. Like if I'm gonna rank them, like this is the one that I will listen to and it's at the top of the list. I do like the idea of like World War III blues. Like obviously that officially World War III has never happened, at least not in the history books. And so it is sort of like a little bit doom and gloom, a little bit like prophetic in a way, apocalyptic, but there definitely are some like silly little lines like let's go play Adam and Eve, and there are like little bits that do get stuck in my head. But what I think is kind of interesting is that this song was supposedly half formulated beforehand and then like half improvised in the session itself. And so I do think that shows like Dylan's ability to not only write really good songs like beforehand, but even in real time to be able to be creative and spontaneous and to let loose a little bit. And I will say the only other thing I need to say on this song is that it did replace the Talkin' John Birch Paranoid Blues or whatever, the song that was censored when he went on to the Ed Sullivan show. And it's weird. I feel like we get conflicting reports. I've seen it said that the reason that these 4 songs were pulled was because of going on that show. But I'm pretty sure he went on Ed Sullivan in like early May. So there would have been no way for for him to like go have that experience of like being censored, not playing the show, walking off the stage, and then to like talk to the record execs and be like, you know what, I wasn't able to play this song. We should probably pull it from the album we're about to release in like 3 weeks. And while we're at it, we'll replace some
Why
of the
would
other
that affect the
songs.
album? Yeah, that's that.
So
I
that
don't.
doesn't
Yeah, I
make
don't.
sense to me. So
But
some
also,
other
actually,
reason for the replacement, though.
I'm just reading through the lyrics here just to remind myself. There are some actually like good lines. Actually, kind of making me laugh a bit. Like I said, "Howdy, friend. I guess it's just us two." He screamed a bit and away he flew. He thought I was a communist. Is a funny line. And obviously, there is one thing about the song that I think is actually really good, which is the final bit about half the people can't be right all the time, etc. But I'll let you be in my dreams if I can be in yours. Kind of that's like a I might get that as a tattoo actually. That's like a really nice kind of um line. I think that almost makes up for the rest of the song for me. And again, I'm not saying that the lyricism's bad. I just don't like the delivery. I just don't like like I say, it sounds like a stand-up routine to me, and it's just a bit just in the middle of the album. I like live, great all the time for it. The audience cry laughing when he replaces lines and says, "I thought it was Donovan," and people like screaming, laughing. Great, that's a really good mood. It's just it's on an
On the
album with
album, it doesn't work.
with no feedback.
Yep.
Like you just meant to listen to it by yourself and kind of go like, "Yeah, classic Bob." Actually, yeah. Um, I'm probably going to shock you with my take on the next song.
Hit me, baby.
I quite like Karina Karina.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
I think it's kind of sweet. The first girl I ever kissed was called Karina in Germany, so that's nice.
Did you sing this to
but
her?
do you know what? There's a genuinely quite a high chance I did.
Oh.
Because I was just such a fucking cunt. And like, there's like an acoustic guitar nearby, and there's that fucking cunt who just picks it up and thinks they can play it. That's me.
That was you.
Not anymore. Still a cunt, but different reasons. But I think like Karina Karina is nice. It's odd that it's one of the traditional songs.
Yeah, it is very much a rearrangement, though. It does not sound like anything from back in the day.
But it sounds very Dylan-esque in the lyricism. I got a bird that whistles, I got a bird that sings, etc. It just I was surprised. Like I said, when I thought Down the Highway was the traditional one, this didn't strike me as it was going to be, because it I know Dylan's giving it kind of his own special flourish, but yeah, I think it's nice. It's odd, isn't it, though, that he's got an album of 13 songs and he decides to do 11 originals and 2 covers when he's got 23 other outtakes which are all originals. He's done an album beforehand, the debut album, the eponymous album, which was all covers but 2, and said he was unhappy with how that turned out. And then of the 13, the 2 he chooses to keep are Karina Karina, which is just a really gentle, sweet love song. And then, for me, what is the worst song on the album? Which is Honey, Just Allow Me
Absolutely.
One More Chance.
Absolutely. Agreed. And that was
It's just,
also recorded the same day as Blowin' in the Wind, mind you.
I just think it's. So if you'll have heard on Traveling Through the Bootleg Series 15, he does it with Earl Scruggs, and
Hmm.
it's quite good. It's very much a just like a sitting around jamming song. It's certainly not one you'd put on the Freewheelin Bob Dylan. Again, it sounds like it should belong on the first album, and even then, I'd be listening to the first album going, I don't really like this song. It's yeah.
Yeah,
I
I don't
almost don't
know.
want to waste any time on it. It's just
I don't. I
yeah.
literally wrote no notes. I have not not in a good way. Like I did
Oh man.
not write anything. The only thing that I wrote about Karina, just to backstep for half
Oh
a
yeah.
second,
Sorry.
we didn't. No, you're good. We just didn't mention that there's a whole band backing him, playing guitar, bass, piano, drums. That's an interesting inclusion as well on your otherwise like just acoustic solo accompaniment album.
And an alternate take was released on the Mixed Up Confusion single as well. So like he kind of leaned heavily into Karina for a little bit. But yeah, like Karina, fine. Um, Honey, Just Allow Me One More Chance, shite. And then also, I'm not. This sounds like we've been really slagging off Freewheelin Bob Dylan. I really like the album, obviously. But I also don't like I Shall Be Free.
That's where we differ. I
Oh, go on.
really like the I Shall Be Free songs, both this one and number 10 that appears on
Oh, mate,
another
we're gonna
side.
fall out on another side of Bob Dylan then.
Hell
Jesus.
yeah, let's go. I mean, okay, I get it. I get why
This is a
someone might
talking
not like
song.
it. Yeah, but I don't know. I think it's humorous enough to me that like it gets over some of that because it's not talking in the way that the other songs are talking. I think where I struggle with talking songs is when it's contextualized to a particular moment that I didn't live through, didn't experience, and don't understand. But I feel like I Shall Be Free is sort of like gimmicky and fun, and he's just like telling a goofy story.
I mean, I will say I do like it more than I like the talking songs. I'm kind of being a little bit harsh on it. Um, I think it's a crazy song to end on the Freeway and Bob Dylan. I think you could have put kind of almost any other song at the end of it. It's a really weird note to end on. Again, there are some funny lines, and it's all about President Kennedy calling him, etc. And I even like the opening thing of I took a woman. It took me a woman late last night. As 3/4 drunk, she looked uptight. Like I think that's quite a funny opening line. I think his delivery's good on it. It's just for me, it just reminds me of those songs I don't really like. And again, as a closer,
Yeah. I,
fucking
I
nuts to go with this.
it is a bit odd. It is a bit peculiar. I think I would have selected just about any other song to close it. I mean, maybe this would have been a good like back half of side one kind of track. And then ending with Hard Rain still or something. I don't know.
Or even to just get rid of something like Honey, Just Allow Me One More Chance, but then leave on a more kind of serious note potentially.
I do think it's weird that Honey, Just Allow Me One More Chance and I Shall Be Free were also going to be on the initially issued version. So it's like Dylan liked those songs enough that he recorded them and kept them even when he goes in and does some like song swapping. So I'd really like to know like who was involved in those conversations. If it was exclusively Dylan, what was his reasoning? What was the rationale? Like if they had conversations about it, like what kept this from being taken off?
I mean, I'm wondering, like, just spitballing now, like Bob Dylan, the debut album didn't sell well. We pointed out incredibly dark album, quite a heavy album. Is Freewheeling trying not be as heavy? Because you have got some like insanely heavy songs like Masters of War, like Hard Rain, and then you know, for a second album for a young guy, do you want to have 13 songs that are going to make people depressed? Probably not. Dylan also, people do forget of how funny he was in interviews and on stage in between songs. He's also a funny guy. So there's probably part of him that's like, I don't want to just be the depressing folk guy, especially when we get on in 2 weeks' time to Times They Were Changing, which I'm spoiler alert, I think is better than Free Will and Bob Dylan, but is a fucking heavy album. That
It's a
is 10
slog.
tracks of like, there is no respite in that album at all. It's either Sousa's gone or everyone's going to die or there's no social justice. That's it in that album.
Ugh.
Like this one at least does have, some respite. It has Karina is a really nice kind of slow down. If you like the Talking World War Three blues, if you like I Shall Be Free, there's kind of some funnier moments. Even Oxford Town is still a heavy subject, but it's played in kind of this almost throwaway, light kind
Yeah.
of way. So I don't know, maybe that's why. Like I say, that's just kind of off the top of my head, but it at least breaks the album up, I suppose, from in a time when people are terrified of nuclear kind of holocaust and are living through issues with civil rights, which thank God we're not living through that now. So
I'm so glad.
so yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why that would make sense to me, I suppose.
Well, we've made our way through the track list. We've talked about most of the songs. I just have a few like fun and interesting facts to help contextualize a little bit better where this album is happening in the broader landscape of history. 3 months after its release, Dylan on August 2nd, 1962. Oh, sorry, wrong date. I don't actually have the date, but just that 3 months later, he plays the March on Washington protest. He plays Is It Only a Pawn in His Game, which would not have been out yet at the time, which is kind of
Yeah, and
interesting
he
too.
plays when the ship comes in as well
Okay.
with Joan.
So it's interesting to think that like contextually, Martin Luther gives his I Have a Dream speech. They're at the Washington Monument, and there's like thousands of people there. And so in some way, protest Bob, so to speak, is really in full swing. And what I think people also forget, again, contextually, Dylan at this point is still basically a complete unknown. To use the title of the movie, like his as we've said ad nauseum at this point, his first album didn't sell well. He's really only known around the folk community in New York. Some people might be aware of him outside of that. But what launches him into the stratosphere, even before the March on Washington, is the 1963 Newport Folk Festival. And I find this particular Newport even more fascinating than supposedly Dylan going electric and the whole controversy that happens there. Because Dylan goes into this place, again, essentially an unknown, and he walks away the folk icon that people still consider him to be to this day.
Yeah, people call it's the weekend Bob Dylan became Bob Dylan. Like you said, he's on stage with Joan for almost all of it. He's with all the singers at the end, like Peter Paul Mary, etc. They're all singing "Blow in the Wind." Everyone's singing his songs. Like it must have been crazy if you were there. If you probably arrived on the Friday going like, "Wow, there's this guy called Bob Dylan playing this weekend," and then you probably left on the Sunday like, "He is our new Messiah." Like, it's August 28th, by the way, is March on Washington.
Okay.
So a month after Newport. Also, the funniest bit of a complete unknown is when they've really badly superimposed his face when she's watching it on TV.
It's horrible. That's really bad. They could have done so much better.
That sticks out like a sore thumb, that bit. What other fun facts have you got for us?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that in 2002, Freewheelin was one of the first 50 recordings chosen by the Library of Congress in America to be added to the National Recording Registry as, quote, culturally, historically, and/or aesthetically significant. I didn't even look up what other 49 albums were included, but Freewheelin is up there as one of the top 50 to be included in the Library of Congress's, collection of important music. And then lastly, and this might even spawn a little bit of a conversation between us here. I'm curious. This is off the deep end a little bit, and most people probably do not care, but I find it really fascinating. So like in the midst of Dylan recording this second album, you have some like drama unfolding behind the scenes. If you ever look at like the producers of these albums, you have John Hammond and Tom Wilson. There's some power play going on here, primarily because of Dylan's manager, Albert Grossman. And it was during this time that Grossman specifically started to take, a great interest in Dylan's business affairs. Apparently, Grossman went so far as to persuade Dylan to transfer the publishing rights of his songs from Duchess Music, whom he had signed a contract with in January of 62, to Whitmark Music. And you might be familiar with Whitmark if you're aware of the Whitmark demos that were released as a bootleg. That's a division of Warner's music publishing operation. But basically, like 7 months after signing a contract with Duchess, Grossman convinces him in July of 62 to sign on to this new group with Whitmark. But unknown to Dylan at the time, Grossman had negotiated sort of behind the scenes with Whitmark, giving Grossman 50% of the share of the publishing income generated by any songwriter that Grossman brought to the company. So Grossman works out this new deal and gets half of what Dylan would be owed. And it's like, what did Grossman do except negotiate this deal, right? And so this secret deal would, create much tension and eventually a bitter legal battle between Dylan and Grossman in the 1980s. And the more that I read about Grossman, the more that I've read about him just from like even what Suze has to say, like not good dude, super bad, super sketchy, super shady.
Kind
Look
of
up Janis Joplin.
Janis Joplin's death, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this guy was out trying to get as much money, grift anybody he could, and Dylan sort of gets swept up in it. And obviously we'll get onto some of this when we talk about John Wesley Harding. But it's really interesting to think about like the things that happen around celebrity. I mean, Dylan at this point is a 21-year-old dude. Imagine you got this big personality like Albert Grossman, showing interest in you, throwing his weight around like politically and to help secure you deals. And you think that you're on the up and up only to find out that he's doing shady backdoor shit behind your back. Have you ever heard of some of this? Like, are you aware of any other like spicy details as it pertains to like some of the behind the scenes?
Well, it's just, I mean, absolutely like you. I know Grossman's like just a really, really bad dude, but he was a really
It's in his name.
He's a gross man, but he was an amazing manager. Like you've seen in Don't Look Back, where he's negotiating with that like the
like booking
like
guy at like some hall. Yeah.
and I think it's in Liverpool or Sheffield or something. And like Grossman's like going to bat for Dylan. He went to bat for Dylan in Newport, but it's because he saw how much money could potentially be made from it
into his pocket.
Yeah, and like I'm obviously, if you're in that business, you're going to be like this kind of vulturistic capitalist who's wanting to squeeze as much money out of everyone. But I think it's also funny, well, not funny, I guess, but like interesting that Dylan's already like kind of so old in ways, like such an old soul and kind of cocky and thinks he knows everything, but then still this just proves that he didn't know everything. Do you know what I mean? Like he can be like the best writer in the world, but he still didn't know anything about the business, and was still kind of taken advantage of by a kind of shark who already had Joan Baez and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and would later have Janice and stuff like that. Like, but we also have to acknowledge that without Grossman, we wouldn't have Bob Dylan.
That's the double-edged sword to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an incredible manager, an incredible promoter for Dylan. And obviously when Dylan found out in 67 and wrote songs like Dear Landlord, and then they kind of broke them, but the court case wasn't for a long time. He was, because Dylan's also like, if you read stories about his business dealings, he's also quite like money hungry and driven by that. But, I imagine he was kind of incredibly shocked and betrayed to find out that 50% for the songs he'd written was going to Albert Grossman. But I mean, the other side of it is like, it's not as if like Grossman did that to Dylan later on, if you know what I mean. Like he also kind of took this weird punt on this kid who hadn't had a very good first album. So it's almost like, well done Grossman for seeing the potential, but also you're a fucking dick.
I mean, he probably thought he was entitled to it. He's like, I've gone on a limb here to put my neck out for this kid. I'm entitled to this compensation as a result or something. But
yeah, I mean, I think he the guy's a dick, man. We'll get on to Grossman way more and John Wesley Harding and on other episodes, I'm sure. But yeah, it's the guy's a dick. I don't know.
It's just interesting to consider that this is when it starts happening so early in his career, like right as he's in the middle of recording this album. But are there many other thoughts that you want to share here? Otherwise, I'm going to close with how the liner notes close as I do.
No, please keep reading from the liner notes. I'm sure everyone's excited.
Everyone's so excited. It's such a good way to
Well,
summarize
before you
everything.
sum up, then let's say if you've liked this episode, then subscribe to our Substack, which is called The Dylanologists. We do kind of paid subscriber episodes only, which is Fellow in the Bootleg series currently. If you can and you want to, then please subscribe to that as well. Otherwise, for these free episodes, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be continuing the discography with the time zero changing. From me, Adam, thank you for listening. And from Jens, some interesting liner notes.
Some interesting liner notes. Here we go. Nat Hentoff says, throughout everything he writes and sings, there is the surge of a young man looking into as many diverse scenes and people as he can find, and of a man looking into himself. And now he quotes Dylan. The most important thing I know I learned from Woody Guthrie. I'm my own person. I've got basic common rights, whether I'm here in this country or any other place. I'll never finish saying everything I feel, but I'll be doing my part to make some sense of the way we're living and not living now. All I'm doing is saying what's on my mind the best way I know how. And whatever else you say about me, everything I do and sing and write comes out of me. It is this continuing explosion of a total individual, a young man growing free rather than absurd, that makes Bob Dylan so powerful and so personal and so important as a singer, as you can hear in these performances. So anyway, be groovy or leave.